Hello! Today I wanted to talk about young adult fiction, because I was recently reading Harry Potter on my break in work, and I felt the need to justify reading Harry Potter to my co-workers. I was like, yeah, well, I haven't read it in a while, and I've forgotten so much, and then I thought, well, I don't need to justify myself. If a man wants to read Harry Potter, a man can read Harry Potter. But it's the kind of thing where I anticipate people will judge me for reading young adult fiction. Not the lovely people on BookTube, not people who read a lot, not any of my friends, but strangers. And I feel that they would be like, well, why are you reading young adult fiction? I'm 25, technically I am a young adult, but at some point I'm just going to be an adult, which is terrifying. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop reading young adult fiction. So I just wanted to talk about why I do read and enjoy young adult fiction, why I think it's necessary for people to read young adult fiction. So I believe that people read generally for two reasons: storytelling and empathy. We want to read a good story that enthralls us, which is exciting and new and different, but we also want to read to experience things we've never experienced before, to feel emotions and to think thoughts that we would never ordinarily feel or think. And I think young adult fiction allows us to do that in as much as any other genre of book would. A quick word on the genre of young adult. I don't actually agree with young adult being a genre. I was watching a video by the BookTube couple a few weeks ago, and they were talking about genre and whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, whether it's useful to have books categorised along with similar books, or whether it's kind of outdated. That's another story for another time, but I think the young adult genre is a very weird one, and I don't really agree with it being a genre. I can see why it's a genre, because it's to entice and encourage young people, teenagers, to go, well, if you like this book, here's one that could be similar. But I feel the only thing that holds together young adult as a genre is that the protagonists tend to be young. They're either children or teenagers. They are generally in school or of school age. And I think that's a really stupid way to group books together, because I read books about people in school. I read books about people who are old. And I think that putting really good and interesting and well-written books in the bookstore under young adult will stop older people from reading those books, because a lot of older people won't go to young adult. They'll be like, well, I'm not a child, I'm going to go to the drama section, or fantasy, or sci-fi, even though all of that is encapsulated in the YA genre. Like The Hunger Games is a dystopian action-adventure. The Hobbit is a children's book, ostensibly, but it's really high fantasy. We've got romance and coming of age, sci-fi retelling of fairy tales, a really good case study of autism. And yet these are all things that come under YA for no other reason that their protagonist is young. And I think that's stupid. It's really stupid. All that aside, that demonstrates the types of genre that fall into YA. Anything can be in YA. So from a storytelling standpoint, I could go to the YA section of the shop and I could find fantasy, dystopian sci-fi, romance, anything I really wanted to. In a way, going to the YA section of a library or a bookstore will then introduce me to a very wide range of authors and a wide range of books. From a storytelling standpoint, I don't think there's anything different between reading a YA fantasy and a fantasy. You're still getting the same sense of adventure, the same mysticism, magical aspects, or what have you. Generally, the biggest difference would be in the language, whether or not there's swear words, explicit content, whether it'll use longer words or shorter words. That's kind of the only difference I would imagine there would be. But that doesn't affect the story, and if you're reading for a good story, it doesn't matter that something is YA. Going back to The Hunger Games by Susan Collins, this is a great dystopian world, it's a great sci-fi. Action, there's adventure, there's political aspects at play, and the story is really good, and it's something that older people would read and enjoy as much as younger people. The second thing that I think people read for is empathy. To live the life of someone else, to understand someone else's point of view, to feel and experience things that they would never do in their own life, or touch wood would never do. I'm probably never going to wake up and find that my whole world is a lie and that I've been bred to encourage certain characteristics and kept in a bubble community away from a scientifically advanced civilization. The Maze Runner series and the Divergent series both cover that. So you can experience what that's like. You can find out what kinds of emotions you might go through as a person to come to that sort of understanding without that ever actually happening. I don't have autism, but I can read The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime and in some way come to some understanding of what autism feels like. You'll never truly understand it unless you're living it, but you can gain some empathy with that person. And I think that's a really important thing for us as human beings, to empathise, to put yourself in other people's shoes. More than any other storytelling medium, books and reading does that. If you're watching a film or a TV series about someone, you're not going to get the same feeling and the same understanding and the same empathy as if you're reading from their point of view, I think. And so when it comes to judging people and talking to people, I think it's much easier to understand their point of view. And I think it's useful for teenagers, say, to be able to browse the YA section of a shop, find these books, and learn empathy, to learn to understand things from other people's point of view. But that doesn't stop when you're a teenager. You know, I'm still learning about the world, I'm still learning how to cope with people and understand people. Like, that's something that never stops. And so I seek out books that will show me someone else's life, that will teach me something about the world, that will teach me something about the human condition. At the age of 30, I don't want to be set in my ways, set in my beliefs of what people are like, because people can always surprise you. I tend to read YA because I want to remind myself to accept people and to understand people. I've had this worrying thing recently, over the last 5 years it's developed, where I'll see a group of young people on the street just chatting, maybe wearing hoodies. Youths. I used to do that 10 years ago. It's not a bad thing. Like, why am I judging them for doing that? And I think reading YA reminds me that young people have problems. Young people, you know, the protagonists of YA books are all young teenagers of school age. They're not perfectly formed human beings. They're still going through puberty. They're still learning empathy. They're still learning how the world works. And it's hard for teenagers. And reading from their point of view and reading the kinds of experiences they go through, even if they're quite mundane things like, oh, my friend's not talking to me in school, or if they're really exciting things like, I need to go on a quest to find a sword and fight an evil empire. Like, you're still getting things from a younger person's point of view. And I think that's really important for older people. It's good for us to understand and remember what it was like to be young. This was all very rambly. I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to say. I was walking the other day and I was rehearsing what I would say and what I was thinking. It's kind of just come out as a stream of consciousness. I'm really sorry about that. I probably haven't made as much sense as I would. We'll see. It'll come together in the editing, right? Thank you very much for watching if you have been. If you've got any thoughts about this, please let me know down in the comments and I'll post another video soon. Thanks very much.